I'm Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday tone tip. On today's video, I want to walk you through the JMPre models in the Axe-FX3, FM9 and FM3. These are based on the Marshall JMPre-1 preamp as used by artists like Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, Deftones, and many others. I even used the JMPre-1 about 10, 12 years ago. I had it in a little rack and I really liked the tones I got out of that unit. It did have a bunch of idiosyncrasies about it because it's a programmable preamp. It's got a fixed tone stack and the bass, middle, treble, and presence controls are actually just a 4-band EQ. So each of the channels on there just basically had a fixed character and you could do some basic sculpting of that tone with that 4-band programmable graphic EQ. Of course, that is modeled in the Fractal. If we look at the output EQ section here, we've got bass, mid, treble, and presence as its own JMPre-1 effect type, or I should say EQ type in the output EQ block here. These controls actually map to the bass, middle, treble, and presence controls in here. So if I turn the middle up, you can see in the output EQ that has been boosted up. But basically, you can get a feel for these models with everything more or less at stock settings. Because the JMPre-1 is a preamp, it's modeled with a Marshall style power section on here, which is the way I used to run mine, and I think the way most people run theirs as well. So let's start with this clean #1 mode. In the JMPre-1 manual, they say this is for like a mellow, jazzy style clean. There's very little output with the drive at 5, so I've turned the drive all the way up to 10. Everything else is at the stock settings. This is my old Strat on the neck and middle pickup combination. So it's a pretty neutral sounding clean tone. There is a little bit of grit in there. If you didn't want that in there, just back the drive control off. Let's contrast that with the clean 2 mode, which I've set up on scene 2. Everything is exactly the same. I've just changed over to the clean 2 mode. The JMPre-1 manual says that this is more based on the kind of JTM 45 or super lead style clean sound. And there is definitely more glassiness and a little bit more grit at these settings. So that's a beautiful sounding, gritty clean. What I would do to that to get a kind of classic, late 80s, early 90s clean, add something like the studio feedback compressor, add something like the analog stereo chorus on there, just bring the drive control back a little bit. I would boost the treble and the presence control just a little bit on there. These controls are quite extreme just to add some more sparkle. And then, if you can play on a middle and bridge single coil or a middle and neck single coil, that's going to give you the glass that goes with this particular amp setting. If you wanted that even cleaner, you could just bring up the amp level control while you bring the drive level down. But that works really nicely for what I like in a kind of live clean tone, having a bit of grit in there. That is a great tip that I encourage people to use on there. Rather than go for a super pristine clean, just add a little bit of grit, a little bit of grunge onto the sound by bringing the drive up and get that kind of edge of breakup sound. That way, if you do dig in a little bit more when you're playing live, you're going to get that kind of spicy breakup. You can always back off a little bit to clean it up or use the guitar volume and tone controls. Okay. Now for the real fun stuff, let's hear JMPre-1 OD1 at the stock settings. I'm going to play in the bridge pickup of this guitar. Then we will hear it with humbuckers. I used to run this mode on my JMPre-1 with like the bass and treble up to 1, I think, and just leave everything else pretty much at the stock settings. The real preamp gain control goes to 20 because of course it goes to 20, but let's just hear this. I think this is such a great way to just get a quick and easy crunch sound if you like that Marshall flavor. OD1 mode, to me, just kind of had that instant classic Marshall crunch about it, whether using single coils or humbuckers. OD2 had its own thing going on. I always use it as a lead style tone. So let's just do that. We'll crank the drive, we'll bring the mid-range up, we'll actually add a little bit of presence and roll off the treble. I've engaged the pan delay type over here, and on this Les Paul, we get this. Because the EQ is so powerful on here, you can actually do the opposite of that and scoop out the mids, pump up the high end, and engage the bass shift parameter, which is really going to beef up the low end there. And this to me just gives you that kind of classic 90s scooped tone. With all of these things in mind, you should be able to pull out a whole range of different tones out of these particular amp models, whether you like the bass shift engaged or not, and whether you like big singing mids or scooped out mids, lots of gain or glassy low gain tones. The JMPre models, I think, make it fairly easy to get a range of classic tones. Let me know how you like them in the comments section below, and if there's any other amp models you'd like me to cover in this particular style. Until then, I'm going to play you all out with my Strat and the OD1 mode. Some delay over a kind of synthwave backing track. Have a great week. I'll see you next Tuesday.